The following is a presentation of KSL Sports. First and 12. A total roundup of BYU and Utah football and the expanded Big 12 Conference. Brought to you by Macy's Grocery Stores. Your hosts are Mitch Harper and Alex Kirry on KSL News Radio and the KSL Sports Zone.
Happy Sunday, everyone. Hope all of you are having a fantastic day. Hey, before you settle in and enjoy some NFL football, we're talking Big 12 football here on this weekend as we recap Week 2 of Big 12 action. If you're listening on podcasts as well, we appreciate you. Subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry. Alex, we had some debate, some heated debate. It conjured up some reactions in our Week 1 power rankings, but I think this is going to get even more people fired up for Week 2 edition of the First and 12 power rankings.
The Big 12 Power Rankings, a weekly rank of all 16 programs, from the elite to the bottom dwellers.
Interestingly enough, for the power rankings, again, this is a week-to-week thing. These are not – we're trying to get our footing here. You know what I mean? Like, there's these first few weeks sort of give us a shakeout as to how things are going. You can be the number 8 team one week and the number 16 team the next week. You know why? Because Mitch Harper is critical. He will absolutely blast you if you do not have a performance.
That's what Kalani said I do. All of us media, you're just so critical about everything.
You guys are so good at scrutinizing us. I don't know. Like, you told me, Mitch. Oh, I heard it. I text Mitch as soon as I heard it because I was like, he's talking to you, dude. He's coming after you, Mitch. How do you be so negative about this BYU team, dog? Mitch doing his job down in Dallas. That's what happens. All right, let's just start from 1. I think we went 16 down to 1 last week, but let's start at 1 this week. And look, you can't argue with taking Utah out of that number 1 spot where they've been, mostly just because the teams behind them were all kind of just sort of meddling around and getting wins. But more importantly, I think that the reason Utah could get put right there was that first half, really that first quarter. And when Cam Rising is in, and I think that ultimately he's going to be okay still. You heard Kyle Whittingham say that hand is going to be okay. I'm not worried about Utah if Cam Rising is going to be okay. But, man, there's some dicey moments wondering if your leader is going to be back. Yeah,
that's the only pause that if you wanted to maybe drop them to 2. But, yeah, you got to keep them at 1 because they just crushed Baylor. I mean, that first half, Baylor was at 30, 40 yards at most. There were stretches where they were at negative 26 rushing yards. Baylor could do nothing up until the point when Cam hit the Gatorade cooler. And I know just that sentence alone sounds very weird, but yes, when he hit a Gatorade cooler, that's when it all changed. But Utah has got to stay at that number 1 spot. Number 2, Oklahoma State. They maintain their spot. And, the Pokes, they do what they did. And that's with – but this time is with Alan Bowman. They pulled off the comeback through the air, and they get a big win over Arkansas, who I think might be a much improved team this year. Arkansas, I think, could be someone that knocks off some teams in the SEC. So I think that could be a real nice data point on a playoff resume, maybe at-large resume for Oklahoma State. I thought that was a big win on Saturday.
Iowa State, the Cyclones, and his Matt Campbell's team obviously pulling out an awesome upset over Iowa at Iowa when you didn't know if it was going to be that way. And they're the ones who make the biggest jump upward, well, besides one other team, but they made the second biggest jump. Iowa State at 3 this week, and I'm okay with it. Look, that's a team that you don't want to mess with now. And they come into Utah this year. That's going to be a tougher game I think people give credit for.
Well, and also, too, you got to look at the resumes to this point. If you tear down the power ranking week by week and you start anew, Iowa State's got one of the best wins in the league to this point, winning at Kinnick Stadium. And, they got a huge win over a rival, and they did it in a comeback fashion, sets the table for them to really do some big things this season. And, Iowa State, that 3-3-5 defense is nasty. They are a physical defense, that style of play that they have, they can match up against anyone. So Iowa State, it's well-deserved. It might be a little bit surprising because K-State is viewed more in the conversation of a Big 12 title contender. They are at number 4 this week, but they struggled against Tulane, and I'm willing to, give some leniency to that. Again, road game, bad weather, and Tulane's a good football program, even though they got a new head coach. Willie Fritz, of course, comes to Houston, but I think I'm willing to give some leniency, but I do need to see improvement from Avery Johnson. He was 15 of 23 passing the football. Not bad, but still not great. I want to see more in the passing game from Avery going forward if I'm going to really see them become that Big 12 title contender like I think they can be.
This team has moved up 11 spots in the last 2 weeks. Arizona State, the Fighting Kenny Dillinghams. Arizona State won last week by 6 touchdowns in their first week, and you kind of go, all right, that's fine. I mean, you don't know what you're going to get in the first week, but certainly being able to impress. They do the same thing again this week. They absolutely are looking like a totally different team. Mitch, as the culture change there, are they going to be short-lived in the power rankings, or is Kenny Dillingham making that turnaround quicker than people thought he was going to?
I think Arizona State, they are playing some great football. Scatabo at running back, Levitt at quarterback. They are looking great. And
does Scabado have 262? Is that what he had this week?
Yeah, he had 262 yards. And they had so many additions from the portal at the line of scrimmage, and those guys are hitting. I mean, they are a much more physical football team, too, in the trenches, and they bullied Mississippi State. I mean, the final score looks like it was close, but that was a beatdown in the first half, and ASU was, Dillingham made it a point coming out of the halftime break, like they got to finish the job because I think it was a learning opportunity to put your foot on the gas and get it done, and they let Mississippi State back into it a little bit. But still, I mean, ASU had that in the bag. That was a dominant performance, and that team's going to be tough to take out. I don't know if they're going to be 9 wins or anything like that, but can we see 8? It's definitely a bowl team. I think right now I feel confident they're going to be a 6-win football team. ASU is climbing fast. They're doing a really nice job in the early part of the Big 12 season. It might be a little bit of a stretch for some, but I think ASU deserves being in that top 5 to this point. Number 6, UCF, they are just crushing the weak schedule that they faced thus far, and you got to respect the dominance from the Knights thus far.
Yeah, and, they stay in that same spot, and that's fine. I think Arizona at 7 is about where everybody got knocked down at least one because of the jump up of Arizona State. And so Arizona, a little bit of a weak performance after that 66-point outburst, and everybody thought Tech McMillan was going to have like a 400-yard week against Northern Arizona. Not the case. So you kind of have a middle that sort of goes, like you said, Arizona State 5, UCF 6, Arizona 7. And then Kansas at 8, I'm comfortable putting the Jayhawks there, even though, they get the loss this week. I think, obviously, they also played a little bit better opponent. Illinois is much improved, but, I mean, you don't say that very often. But it is a Big Ten opponent.
BYU and Baylor fans experienced what Kansas experienced over the weekend, where you got yards, you moved up and down the field, but with the Jeff Grimes offense, you'll sometimes be left with a final score total that's like – that you couldn't get into the end zone. You couldn't finish the job. And, Kansas was turnover prone, and they made a lot of mistakes. Jalen Daniels, 3 picks. He's got to clean that up. And I thought on the final drive, too, his decision-making there, trying to have an opportunity to maybe get a Hail Mary opportunity, his arm strength didn't look great to me either, Alex. I thought that was kind of a little bit of an underrated piece there watching that football game. But Kansas, I thought, took a little bit of a step back. And, look, they're still getting used to this spotlight role. I mean, who would have thought you'd get to a point where a Big Ten team is getting hyped over beating a Kansas football team? So that's a testament to the job they're still doing. But I think they're over that sentiment. They want to just be viewed as a nationally ranked team week after week, and they squandered that opportunity. I would imagine they're probably going to fall out of the polls when the poll gets released a little bit later today. Number 9, TCU. They haven't faced really anyone. Stanford on the road in week 1, and then this week they played
Liechtenstein,
LIU,
wasn't it? Was
Long
it
Island University. It was just a total scrub, and they thumped them. And TCU it goes to 9.
BYU stays right behind TCU, and again, they get knocked down 1, mostly because of the moving of Arizona State. But I'm fine putting them back kind of right where they were at there in that right behind TCU and ahead of West Virginia, who's at 11. And, not a lot changed there in the middle. And I think for BYU fans, they go, yeah, they did beat SMU, and SMU is, on paper, probably one of the better opponents that teams across the Big 12 faced. But, yeah, it wasn't necessarily pretty. So I think they're about where they should be there, right behind TCU at number 10.
No question. And I think the quarterback situation gives the reason to maybe knock them just a tick, because when you're forecasting long term, I think 10 is a fair spot right now for BYU, but if it was solely based on the defense, they're definitely trending up. 11, West Virginia, they were struggling in the first half against Albany, and it took like a late first half touchdown from Garrett Green to really get some separation, but the Great Danes were competitive for about 25 minutes. I thought that was a little bit concerning. I know probably a hangover effect from the Penn State game, but West Virginia, where they just kind of a one-hit wonder last year with a weaker schedule. This year the schedule's ratcheted it up. Are they going to have Neil Brown back on the hot seat? We'll see. But I kind of was a little bit underwhelmed in that first half against Albany. And then number 12, Colorado, the Buffs, they had a real opportunity to climb this poll because had they won at Nebraska or even been more competitive, they could have made a jump, but squandered that opportunity.
Yeah, frankly, I mean, they had a bad enough performance. Now, Baylor was absolutely abysmal, so that's their number 13 on our list here. Baylor, I think Baylor could actually – look, Baylor, Cincinnati, Houston, and Texas Tech, that 13, 14, 15, 16, what we have right now, that seems like it's going to be some version of that the rest of the – well, although Texas Tech is at 16 because Mitch likes to punish people for punching below their weight. I mean, that's a Mitch Harper deal. If you underperform, Coach McGuire – you're on notice. Mitch Harper's going to get after you if you guys show up flat, man, and that's what happened.
They did, and there was just I questioned the effort a little bit. And I'll be curious to hear from Joey McGuire. And I know they didn't have Taj Brooks, but man, that team just lacked any sort of fire and passion a little bit. Whereas Houston showed some heart against Oklahoma. And last week they lost to a UNLV team I think is pretty good. So I think Texas Tech warrants being the 16th spot this week. Now, will they at season's end? Probably not. They've got talent on that team, but I'm tired of talking about Texas Tech having talent. Like, it's got to show up. Yeah. I know he's a great recruiter, but it's got to start showing up here soon. And Joey McGuire's got to get that talent to translate and give great results because they've got the resources. That's what's crazy about Tech is like, they've got resources and the ability to win big, and they're nowhere near the thought of you entertaining them as a title contender in this league.
I honestly think by the end of the year, Baylor's going to be the worst team in this conference. Like that's where my head's at because I think Dave Aranda is not long for that job. You could see that guy losing his gig halfway through the season just based off of one. I mean, if you're a defensive coach, you're supposed to be really, really good on defense. They're still like the last year they ended like 120th in total defense. Not good, and their offense doesn't move the ball at all. I bet we see Baylor in the basement in the coming weeks here. All right, there are your power rankings. They change every week, and it's a tryout. Look, people are beating the door down on this show all the time, Mitch. They're like, hey, how can we get our team up in the power poll? Impress Mitch Harper. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. All right. We'll take another break here. We'll come back. We've got more to go. Our Utah game breakdown with Baylor. Speaking of the Baylor Bears and the Utah Utes, Cam Rising, his status going forward, what that looks like. Much more to go around the corner. It is your 1st and 12 program brought to you by Macy's. Happy shopping. Mitch Harper, Alex Kirry back right after this. More to go. Stay with us.